I've been coaching in the area of strength conditioning and Olympic style weightlifting now in some capacity for almost 20 years. My last venture has been as an Olympic style weightlifting coach of 2 teams, one on the college team and one on the community team. Started back in 2012, 13, somewhere in there. And recently stepped down from coaching formally. I had stepped down right around COVID time. So coaching weightlifting, though, for about 8 years prior to that. And this video is more just a reflection of some of those times now that I'm, I guess, officially not coaching more. A young man has taken over the weightlifting team. He's going to do a fantastic job. But sometimes life changes, and I got 2 little ones at home I need to raise. And so my wife's there too, and she does most of the work, let's be honest, but I need to be there too. And so, stepping away. But what I thought I'd do is put just some thoughts together about my reflections on coaching, that if you're a coach and if you're training people, or even if you're just training yourself, you might find these valuable. And some of the things that I learned over the years. I mean, I've been a professor for a long time as well. This is my 15th year in academia as well. So I've been a professor and coach. One of the objectives I had when I went in academia, I started in coaching, but I did not want to lose the coaching. I'll be honest with you, I struggled with professors that would just teach me out of the book and had no stories to relate. And as a person that was starting in the field, I wanted to do everything. I had an advisor give me some great advice one time. When I was getting my doctoral degree, I was trying to do everything. I was trying to coach, I was trying to do doctoral degree, I was trying to do research. And my advisor at the time, who's a very wise person, said, hey, you can do it all, you just can't do it all at once. And I disregarded that, of course, like any bullheaded person should initially. But over the years, I've realized that and got to the point where my kids, somebody's going to suffer, right? And it wasn't going to be my kids, which meant that I was spending less and less time in the gym and training. So that was my first lesson reflecting on this is, whatever you're doing, if you're starting a gym, if you're looking to go back to school, whatever it is, just appreciate there are windows of opportunity. Some of them can close forever, sure. Like, I'm never going to be a teen model, right? That's just not going to happen. It's never going to, I should just took my chance when I was younger. But, for the most part though, I mean, there's no rules here. Like, if you want a PhD, it doesn't mean you have to do it when you're in your early 30s or there's no chance, right? I mean, there can be windows later in life. I'm not saying life isn't a Disney movie where it all works out and we follow our heart and all that crap. But, it is possible to do things later in life, and sometimes you just got to pace yourself. And I came to a point where I realized that my family was going to be the priority. And in the end of the day, I wasn't servicing the athletes like I should. And so as a coach, I needed to step away. I wasn't helping anybody in training. And so, early on I had more time and, I could devote the needed and adequate amount of time for programming and for coaching and all the rest. So my encouragement is, I guess if you want to put these into points, is that, it's okay to have some limitations at times. I work with people who lose weight, and it's like, well, I'm working, I think I mentioned this a few videos ago, I'm working 60 hours a week and, all these things, and I'm a high stress person already, and, and I want to lose weight. It's like, this isn't the time for it. Like, I know you want to, but it doesn't mean that it's a good idea. But that doesn't mean that the time won't come. Maybe right now you focus on maintenance or make smaller changes that may still cause you to lose weight, but just not as fast as you want to. So that's the first thing, though, is that piece of advice obviously stuck with me for, that was not that long ago, 12 years ago, somewhere like that, maybe longer. She told me that. And again, that's really stuck with me. So that's my first piece of advice. If you are trying to do all things at once, then you're going to need some help. I've met people that can do that. They do a good job of delegating. And I suck at that. Like, I like to have my hands in things that's going on. And that's like a control freak type of act that doesn't work in some cases. And so, like when it came to coaching, another piece of advice, I met the strength coach from Kentucky, like one of the first ones. And she had a similar piece of advice is, learn how to replicate yourself. And I didn't take that advice to heart. Again, I ignored it because I think I know everything and I don't know crap. I'm just stubborn and bullheaded. It takes me a while. Obviously, these things sunk in. They just, it's hard ground with me. It takes a little while for it to sink in, but eventually it gets in there. But that's inadvertently. I feel like I've influenced some coaches. These are good folks that wanted to learn. It wasn't my initiative; it was theirs. And now they're going to go do even better things. They've already been doing great things. So anyway, so that's the first thing. The second thing is admit when you're wrong. Like, I had some hard coaching moments that I made mistakes, whether that was in programming or event day. I mean, the young man that's taking over to run the team, he bombed out. I mean, I was in a university championship because of both bad programming and day of management. And I'd been coaching a while at that point. I made some mistakes, and I wasn't. In a way, I was encouraged because I realized other coaches had made lots of mistakes as well, even some of the big ones. Right? They just don't. I mean, they don't admit them a lot of times because that doesn't sell books. And it's not like a malicious thing. That's just not good advertising. I got nothing to lose, so I can say stuff. But I made a lot of good decisions too. I did a lot of good things, but I also made some mistakes. I mean, every coach is going to make a mistake. And, without getting too Disney movie, it's okay, you're going to be okay. No, I mean, you got to learn from them though. That's the thing, is not, don't keep repeating them, or pay attention. So I made the same mistake a couple times because I wasn't paying attention to the right variables. And so, I underestimated the difficulty in cutting weight, for a weightlifting meet. And then on the other side, of those that weren't cutting, those that were bigger athletes, I underestimated, the inability, I overestimated the ability to recover from the type of training that I was subjecting these couple of these athletes to. And so I made some mistakes there, right? A lot of the theories, like I talked about the difference between men and women, that was born out from the research literature, but it was also born out from, about 5 years of coaching when I'd seen these trends and, just from training athletes. Of course, I've seen the differences in like kind of the approach to lifting, but physiologically, I was like, well, they need to train about the same, but just these trends are just undeniable for most athletes. And so I had to say, hey, I was doing this wrong, right? I tried out a lot of different programming, not in a evil mad scientist, because we're talking about people here, okay? But I would manipulate small variables here and there to try to improve performance and things that wouldn't hurt anybody. And I came up with a similar program. It was funny how I ended in the same place, of this 6-week program that looked a lot like some of Vladimir Surin's stuff out of his block periodization book. I found out some, by paying attention, watching my athletes, because I did not want them hitting the wall and getting high fatigue, that, I found out a pretty good cycle, 6-week cycle that I really liked. And worked really well for those athletes. And I tweak it here and there, and some of the tweaks were good and some of them weren't good, but when I saw they weren't going well, immediately reverse course. So admit when you're wrong though. Even when you're training, like if you're like, this isn't working, okay? You have to give things time, of course, but if you've been doing something for 6 months and it isn't working, like whatever working is, like you've been legitimately doing it for 6 months, like you've been following the regimen routine, or you're trying to build muscle mass, whatever it is, and you're just not getting any results, well, maybe it's time to change something up. I mean, it doesn't have to be overhaul the whole thing. You have to throw everything out, but you might maybe start changing some things. Like if you want to see your lateral delts get bigger, maybe you're not doing a volume for them. Maybe you need to hit them a different way. If your snatch technique is not very good, well, if it still sucks, and especially if you've been training for a while and you still have this problem, well, you need to spend a lot of time with some drills. Do some different drills to try to help get you out of that rut. Admit you're wrong and learn from it. Go the other direction. Now, the last piece is the last one I'll leave you with is I just kind of mentioned a minute ago, like when I would program, coaches was talking about don't do something unless you do it yourself, and the whole idea, with the program, and I agree with that. I've done some pretty awful training regimes over the years that I know the boundaries that I think are ridiculous for an athlete to do or an individual to do, and I try to stay out of those weeds. Even German volume training, which I thought was awful, but something that could be important, valuable. I instituted that when I was early coaching and realized this is dumb. Like some of the athletes they would just be literally thrown up in the front of the building. Like that's ridiculous. Like that's not needed. Even though I tolerated it okay, And in principle, the volume made sense. It was just ridiculous amount of fatigue. Like, violates good training practice. Again, that was one of those moments of, hey, this is, it doesn't matter what, may seem like makes sense. It doesn't, and then look in the research literature, and then you see some studies at 5 set caps, and I had already started to arrive at that anyway. I mean, right, this is part of the process. Again, many are wrong, but what I'm getting at is the part of it too was watching these athletes suffer needlessly. Like, this is, I could bear up under it and do it. But it was me. Now I'm instituting this kind of training on somebody else. These are people, right? Yeah. And that's what I'm kind of getting at. Not just hey, don't make people suffer when they don't need to. Obviously there's time to push people. I'm not talking about that, but more so that, the value, the importance of relationship and the value of understanding you're dealing with people. Like, we read these phys books. I'm looking at one, Super Training on my shelf over there. That's an amazing book. It's a heavy book. It's drinking a Guinness. There's a lot of great training books. But one of my favorite books, I think, was Conscious Coaching. I did a book review on it. Really liked it because it brings in we forget sometimes we're dealing with people. I think it's easy to forget that when you program. Like, hey, this person is going through a tough time. Well, I better manage that programming. Hey, they come in the gym and they're down. What's going on, right? Hey, this person is going through a phase in their training where they're really struggling. Well, maybe I need to do something else to give them some wins. Even as something, as I've mentioned this a few times, as micro as changing the sets and rep structure to increase engagement with the program and avoid monotony. I mean, you're dealing with people. You're not dealing with machines. And I sometimes I feel like we lose that a little bit when people buy programs and we peddle, like people are peddling like these program, whether it's weightlifting, powerlifting, whatever. It's like, do this program and all your dreams will come true. And it's supposed to be like a Disney movie. Okay. But the reality is you're dealing with a person that has a real life, and they have different abilities to tolerate pain. They have different abilities to stay focused during a training session. They have different intrinsic desires. Somebody, I would grind out whatever was necessary because I wanted to be the best athlete. Others might say, I'm going to grind out whatever is the minimum. And if it gets too hard, I'm going to pull back. Well, obviously that person needs a kick in the pants, right? But if you're not there to give that to them, or that's you, you need to find a program that works for you. You're a person. So that's one thing I went through is you read all these cool physiology books and training theory books, and they're fantastic, and they're cool to think about, and you put everything in your computer, and again, the old Mike Tyson thing, you have a plan until you get punched in the mouth, and you get in the first day, and you realize half the athletes are unmotivated, or in the case of like the team I was coaching, they were highly motivated, and you had to slow them down, but then they had lives. They had other things going on. I had one of the best lifters I ever coached snatched 165 kilos, but he can never get his clean and jerk up to where it needed to be. And a lot of it had to do with the business of his schedule. He's a phenomenal person. He was a phenomenal athlete. He was a hard worker. He was a businessman. But he could never achieve what he was capable of because of what was going on outside of the gym. I also made a few mistakes with him as well. I probably gave him a little bit too much volume and then tried to pull it back, but it still wasn't enough. Like I overestimated his ability to recover. And because a lot of it was a dietary and outside life stress and things like that. Okay. And so again, you're dealing with people. You're not dealing with, people aren't concepts. They're people. And while the physiological concepts are a helpful place to start, you're going to have to learn how to modify. That's the experience of coaching that really shows up is a lot of people will get really good at identifying problems. That's why you have YouTube, right? Oh, I think this technique could be better, but okay, what do you do about it then? If you're so smart, right? how are you going to fix it? Quote unquote, fix it. Well, I have this drill that's magical. And I would call these guys spot coaches, right? I would send athletes out to a gym and they would get watched by somebody there, and this coach would give them all this stuff to fix. Well, if you would just do this, and if you're and they're trying to poach them too, right? But also we like to flaunt our knowledge, right? Instead of just saying, look, I'm just going to defer to the fact that your coach probably is working with you on things. If you want me to watch something, I will. I'm not going to give you any feedback though. Well, of course you can identify problems, but fixing them takes time and takes effort. It takes patience. And you have to have some know-how as a coach too, to know what to fix or how to fix it. Like, I'll give you an example here to finish up. The whole, keep the bar close. That's my favorite one of my favorite examples of this is keep the bar close in like cleans and snatches. Well, that's great. It actually is really good advice. Biomechanically, it's great advice. Well, how do you do it? Do you just shred your shins and your thighs and your abdominal wall all the way up when you clean it? Of course not. So how do you keep the bar close? And now you're getting into some answers, right? Of, how you set your lats and the pace of the bar movement and how the shins are moving, right? I mean, there's a lot of things in your balance on your foot and how that changes over time, right? And we're just talking about a clean, okay? So, recognizing that just because you identify a problem, you can't necessarily fix it. It doesn't make you an expert, okay? And so, realize when you're working with yourself or with others that just because you identify a problem and mechanically it makes sense that you should just be able to tell that person, hey, you're doing this wrong. Well, unless you have a solution, in a way, you're just complaining, okay? And that's not helpful to anybody. So anyway, I'll leave it there. I do want to say thank you to all the athletes that suffered under my under my leadership in the Barbell Club. We had some very successful athletes, and while that success does show up as national, university national champions, lots of national medal winners, we qualified at the time I was coaching. We qualified at lifter every single national weightlifting meet, whether it's youth, junior, seniors, American Open finals, universities. Of course, we had somebody compete and represented the club, and every single one of them went from really the club out of the dirt. And by God's grace, it was able to start it, and it was blessed with a lot of good athletes that came by and had a chance to train them for a long time, and saw again great success. And I mentioned the medals but there was also a lot of lifters that won a state championship or finished second at state championships, and they had totals that went up 30%. And so it's not where you start; it's where you finish. And not all finishes are gold medals, but at least not the actual hardware around your neck. Some of those gold medals, though, are just the progression, the improvement, the journey. And those are wins too. It's not just the athletes that have the medals and have the trophies and those types and titles and the success that went along with that, but it's also the athletes that just trained hard and they saw progress. And again, maybe the highest meet they ever went to was a local meet, but that's success too. So thank you all as athletes. I'm going to keep coaching in different capacities, but I think my time as an Olympic-style weightlifting coach is done for now, at least running a whole club. Maybe done forever, who knows? But we'll see, where Providence ends up pushing me around, and certainly doing remote coaching still, if you're interested in that. But in terms of in-person coaching, it might be a while before I get back to it. I got some kiddos to watch, lots of jiu-jitsu classes to go to. And so it'll be a lot of fun. Okay, that's enough of that. I'll see you in the next video. Going to keep going on these videos, though. They don't stop. So educational videos, I'm excited to start doing that. I'll talk about skeletal muscle here in the next maybe week or so. I'll put a video out, journal clubs, and all the rest. Dr. Miller signing out as the last time as an OKC Barbell Club coach, even though I haven't been coaching for a couple years now. And thanking those that have been involved with the club. And if you want to pursue Olympic-style weightlifting in the Oklahoma City metro area, I encourage you to reach out to Victor Vargas at OKC Barbell Club. He's a guy that suffered under me, and he learned from all my mistakes. And so he's a great coach. Recommend highly as a person and as a coach, and I hope that you'll look him up and look up the club if you're in this area. Even if you're coming through town, stop by and get a lift in with them. They'd be happy to have you. See you in the next video.